This morning's scripture reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22. And if you'd like to follow along in your bulletins, you're welcome to. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth and show deference to no one. For you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. May God bless our modern hearing of this sacred story.
As both the roads and the pews indicate, many seasonal residents of Naples are back in town. And if you just arrived back in town and missed the big news of what's going on, let me share it with you. Approximately 10 days ago, something major happened on Fifth Avenue downtown. Late Sunday night into Monday morning at 1:12 a.m., a large black bear was spotted strolling Fifth Avenue restaurants and looking into the windows of Fifth Avenue shops. This black bear ignited social media. Videos, pictures of the bear posted everywhere. The bear then traveled from Fifth Avenue and decided to hang out on someone's yacht downtown. Thankfully, the bear was caught and relocated. And as the local news was doing a story on this bear, there was a news reporter who approached a Fifth Avenue downtown high-end dress shop owner and was showing her on his phone what the bear was doing, looking into her shop at a dress that was on a $450 dress that was on a mannequin, and the shop owner just couldn't believe what she was seeing with her eyes. Her comment back to the reporter, I thought, was rather astute. She said, "You know what? Even on Fifth Avenue, there are still some things that don't belong to Caesar." And I said to myself, there's my sermon title in 2 weeks. For we walk into the story of Jesus having a conversation with the teachers of the law, and that is part of what he's teaching them. There are some things in our lives that don't belong to Caesar. You'll recall the story. The Pharisees were attempting to trap Jesus and asked him, "Do we have to pay taxes to Caesar?" If Jesus responds, "You don't have to pay taxes," well, then the Herodians are going to tell the Roman governor, and Jesus could be executed for treason. If, however, Jesus said, "You do have to pay taxes," then Jesus would be deemed disloyal to his Israelite nation. And so there he is trying to deal with this pickle, and Jesus shares back with them, "One of you bring me a coin, bring me a coin." And Jesus then reveals that Caesar is on the coin, and that's when he issues the teaching that we all know rather well. We are supposed to render to God what belongs to God and render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And we're told in Matthew 21 that the Pharisees are absolutely amazed by Jesus' teaching, which raises the question, why would they be amazed? For is it really just Jesus teaching here that we too, as churchgoers, must pay our taxes every April 15th? I think that sometimes over the centuries we have interpreted this scripture as, our moral and ethical obligation to, yes, begrudgingly pay our taxes. And I suppose this scripture does teach that. But if that's the case, why would they be amazed? My sense is that the Pharisees were amazed, not because Jesus said, look, you've got to pay taxes. Rather, Jesus shared back with them something that was prophetically courageous. Namely, there are some things that don't belong to Caesar. Heaven, the presence of God, comes into our lives, into the life of the church, and into our world when we remember that there are various different blessings that come our way that are so good they cannot be measured. Some things don't belong to Caesar. For when you think about it, when it comes to Caesar, Caesar really is the equivalent, Caesar's personality is to counting. Consider Caesar Augustus during the Christmas story that we read every year. Who is Caesar Augustus known for? What is he known for? The census. He puts out the census at Christmas time so that everyone can participate in his tax burden. Caesar equals census, that which can be counted. And no, this isn't the same Caesar being discussed in this text, but the family lineage of personality is true. Caesar's face is on a coin. It is something that can be counted. What was it that mattered so much to Caesar? Whatever it was that could be assigned a numerical value. Whatever could be monetized, whatever could be counted, that is what mattered to Caesar. Recently, many Bible commentaries have been trying to really get at the roots of this Caesar personality that matters of what can be counted. What can be counted is what matters. And in a Bible commentary that I read recently on this scripture, the Bible commentator was talking about a book in our day that perhaps illumines Caesar's personality. And maybe this is appropriate to speak about as we're just around the corner from the World Series. It is the book, if you're in the business world or if you appreciate baseball, by Michael Lewis entitled Moneyball. The book was actually made into an Oscar-nominated film starring Brad Pitt. And the book is about how a general manager of the Oakland Athletics, Billy Beane, decided to go about monetizing various different baseball players based only on statistics from previous seasons, and that based on those statistics, he could then develop a championship organization. Well, Beane came under a lot of criticism because there were many who felt that, chemistry in the locker room was important, or diving for a foul ball during a home game down 8 runs would energize the fan base. Beane kind of overlooked the intangibles, perhaps, because for Beane, what it really boiled down to was a number. If you could count it, then it mattered. You know who would have loved Moneyball? None other than Caesar. I had an American Christianity professor in graduate school. His name was Grant Wacker at Duke Divinity School. And he used to always say, every movement needs a counter movement to give it some identity. Jesus is instituting the kingdom of heaven on earth, and the counter movement, if you ask my opinion, is precisely perfect. The counter movement is Caesar. What matters is what can be assigned a numerical value, what can be counted, what can be monetized. And for Jesus, what matters the most? Those things that cannot be assigned a numerical value. The things in our lives that are so special that they cannot receive a price tag or a number. What are those things in your life? Perhaps it's your relationship with God that sustains you and brings you hope. Or perhaps it's a family member, a spouse, or a partner, someone you share a pew with this morning, a child, a grandchild, someone you love who's been there for you recently. Can you really assign a price tag to that or a number to how good it is? Or perhaps, as Pastor Angela alluded to in her prayer, it's something about God's creation, a sunset here in Naples, the stars, the beach. Can you really assign a numerical value to that? Or perhaps it's your place of service with those who are in need, or a place of service in the local community, and in your giving back, you receive rewards that you could never, ever monetize. You know, maybe, just maybe, Jesus was right. There are some things in our lives that don't belong to Caesar. And when it comes to those things that are so special that we cannot assign a numerical value to, we would be wise to acknowledge what they are, to live deeply into them, to be generous toward them, and to continue to walk in their direction. For when we do that, there is a heaven on earth that comes to our lives that is truly special. You know, scholars are interested in pointing out a detail about this text that you might find very interesting, maybe something that you've never heard before, and take it for what you will. But in Matthew chapter 21, some scholars say it is absolutely critical to note that Jesus did not have the coin on him. In other words, when Jesus is having this conversation with the Pharisees, Jesus has to say, you know that coin? Bring it to me. Hand it to me. In other words, because Jesus did not have that coin in his pocket, he may very well have been communicating back to them, you want to know what my kingdom is all about? It's all about that which cannot be monetized or inscripted on a coin. And why were the Pharisees amazed, you asked? I think in that moment when he did not have that coin, they looked at him like he was a black bear on Fifth. That under the shadow of the Roman Empire, right next door to Caesar, he was going to say, really and truly, I've got a kingdom here that cannot be quantified. I'll close with a final illustration that I heard some years ago in a famous Christmas Eve service by one of my favorite preachers. His name is Fred Craddock. And he was trying to get at this Caesar personality in the New Testament of what it means to value that which can be counted. And he was talking on Christmas time about, Caesar equals census and Jesus equals compassion. And he used this metaphor, this analogy. He said, imagine it's Christmas Eve about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you're stuck in the Chicago O'Hare Airport. There's a snowstorm. And you cannot get home. And there you decide to approach the United Airlines ticket counter, and the person behind the ticket counter says, we don't have any flights to where you're going, but we can get you maybe somewhere nearby and somewhere later this evening. And you say back to the person behind the counter, well, what's it gonna take? And the agent says, well, what are you willing to spend? And you consider what it is that you're going home to, and you bring out your credit card, and you say, whatever it takes. What if there are blessings in our lives so good that they cannot be monetized? Teachers of the law, disciples, Naples UCC, acknowledge that which comes from God that is so good that it cannot be assigned a numerical value. Live into that. More heaven will come into your life. So go ahead. Render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But never forget that there are still some things that only belong to God.